Hi, everyone. Hi, Ajay. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Let's give it another few minutes, 2 minutes maybe, to let people join our webinar today. I see there are 10 people right now. Welcome, everyone. Maybe you can start just introducing yourself very quickly. Just say hello, maybe where you're from. Here in the call, we have Nidhi, we have Ajinkya, and we have Prakash, and myself, Jan. And we really look forward to today's event. Maybe some of you have already joined last week, the 3-hour-long training. And now we have actually a mini series of 4 sessions. Today is session number 1. Where we again will cover the 7 stages of machine learning, a framework that we developed. But we will go now a little bit more in depth and cover more of the different stages, bring more examples, and so on. Hello, Sonali. All right. I would say I hand it now over to Ajinkya, who's gonna again lead today's training. But also Prakash, Nidhi, and myself will jump in once in a while, share our perspective. Let's make it again a very interactive session. This is something that went really well last week, and that's something we want to continue to have, like a interactive session with everyone. So if you have questions, please ask them. If you have input, insights you want to share, please put them in the chat. That would be amazing. I think this is something where we can get most out of today's training, if it's not only a one-way communication, but actually a conversation. All right, Ajinkya, so you want to take over?
Cool. So let's then start. Let me just share my screen. Okay. So hi everyone, welcome to the session. And in this session, what we are going to focus on is not just machine learning, but it's more like a meta level wherein we think about how to learn, what to learn, from where to learn, and other details like these. These details which are really missed most of the times. Okay. So machine learning as a field has been become quite popular in, I don't know, since 2016, 2015. And now in 2020, when many of the companies have added a lot of features to these field, because of that, things are very different now. The companies, Google, cloud computing, Amazon, Microsoft, they've added a lot of libraries, and that has made a lot of difference. Okay. So, and the field became so popular that there is also a lot of people learning this field. So now we need to think about a lot more things. Okay. So not just why to learn. Okay. So every training which kind of like begins with machine learning, they talk about what is machine learning and why to learn machine learning. So now I'm not going to talk about why to learn, because whether it is through YouTube ads or through Facebook posts or anywhere else, the news has made it sound like AI is the only thing which is going to have jobs in future. So I'm not going to talk about why, how much money it has, how much impact it can have on your career, and blah blah blah. I'm also not going to talk about resources to learn, because this is also kind of like present since a long time. People have had the let's say lots of stuff, blogs, courses available everywhere. Okay. So this is not also not we are going to talk about. We are going to talk about how to learn, we are going to talk about how to think, and we are going to talk about how to showcase what we kind of like learn. So we have with us, we have Yan, who worked as a business manager in company Udemy. We have Prakash, who works in Samsung in data science as a data scientist tech lead, team lead. We have Nidhi, who is just starting into this thing, who has been into ML for 2 years, I guess, 1 or 2 years. And I'm Ajinkya Kolle, machine learning trainer. I have been into this field for 4 or 5 years. So we have a different perspective here, and everyone who is attending this is just a way of us to give you direction, a right direction to learn in future, so that you don't take the less efficient path. Okay, so starting about this thing, which is how should you learn, how are things changed in 2020. Okay, so everybody kind of like knows that nowadays it is in huge demand. So this is the demand of machine learning, and this is also the supply. Okay, the truth is the speed at which the demand is increasing, it is a bit less than the speed at which supply is increasing. So eventually at some point the supply is definitely going to overtake the demand, and it will be quite soon in future. Okay, so right now at 2020, supply is definitely a bit less than supply, less than demand. But maybe 2021, 2022, that's when things will be different, where supply will be more than demand, and business will likely be a lot more careful when they are trying to implement AI. So how what changes now? Since 2016, AI has been democratized. What does it mean? It has become easier. So many tools, so many companies have just spend a lot of money and time trying to make it easy to do. And second is like it has become popular. Because it has become popular, everyone kind of like is trying to become data scientist, not realizing other roles which are present in the job market as well. It's as if there is no programmer job. That's how the market is reacting. That's how the news hype and frenzy of learning has happened. But one should have a complete picture before we try to do anything, right? So for 2020, the things which are important going forward are things like this. One, it is not what you know, but how you think. It's like just a second. It's there was a mistake here. It's not what you know, it's how you think. So this is a quote which is extremely popular, which really resonated with me when I was doing a master class by Neil deGrasse Tyson. So it's like he was telling whether it is scientists or entrepreneurs or managers or developers, they are not quantified as amazing by the amount of information they remember, but how you think. So everyone who is struggling to get a job, everyone who is trying to learn machine learning, anybody who is into this field, the focus should be on how do we develop our thought process. A data scientist who is a of level of maybe Andrew Ng or Ian Goodfellow or Jan LeCun, Jeffrey Hilton. So all these guys, what separates them from the rest is like a deep research knowledge is one thing. That's the knowledge part. They are definitely quite world leaders in that. But also how you think, how they think is different. So Andrew Ng, he kind of like was consultant on rather lots of machine learning projects. He kind of like started and implemented machine learning in Google Cloud, Google rather, not Google Cloud. So it's how you think. That is what made the difference in the kind of like projects which he was implementing. So then that's first thing. How you think? Just a second, by the way. Sure. So first, it's focus on thinking, not just information. The second is skills, not just knowledge. Okay. So there is a huge difference between knowledge and skill. Knowledge is someone who has information on how to do something. Skill is you have applied that knowledge and actually learned to do it. Okay, so it's like knowing how to drive and actually being able to drive. Huge difference. Okay, in the things which are like, let's say, driving, the difference is not that big. Okay, but in things like machine learning, anybody who has skill, who can take what he has learned and she has learned and apply it to solve problems, only they have value. So not just think of knowledge, but also think from the skill perspective. That is one part. Then the final part, which is kind of like a lot more important, is you then also have to think about the visibility of your skills. So, being active on places like Kaggle, having a rank which is at least a master, having your, let's say, thought process which is visible, having a thought process which is unique and different and useful, all these things kind of like combine together to have a job. Okay. So, the let's kind of like start more interactive discussion now. The discussion starts around this key point. AI is intersection of AI and business. There is one more thing which comes here is AI is part of the product. Okay, so if I kind of like make AI here, so AI is a kind of like a small part of the product, not the whole product. And this product is associated with a problem. So whenever we have a problem, the solution of that problem is what the problem product is aiming to solve. So think of these four intersecting circles. We have product, we have problem, we have AI, and we have business whose entire aim is to monetize the product which is trying to solve a problem. So the intersection of AI and business, which in case is like intersection of the product, its aim is what? Make money or save money or give convenience. So generally, in my opinion, these are the three things, three categories, major categories in which all products kind of like fall. Anything which makes money, that will definitely be prioritized. Anything which saves money will definitely be prioritized. Or anything which gives makes things so convenient, that also kind of like is prioritized. So that's the business part. Okay. The problem part here is the user part. User analysis, or it is a problem analysis or need analysis. Sorry, this is the need analysis. And then the final part is here AI. So intersection of these three things, if you can talk confidently and in a competent manner, in which you can kind of like talk about all these three things, all these four things, that is when you have a solid foundation on which you can begin to go a bit farther. So AI, business, product, and problem. Okay. Now, because some people are new here to AI as well, so let's think about what is AI. We will start with what is AI, and then we will start brainstorming about AI, business, product, and problem. Okay. So first, what is AI? Just a second, by the way. Okay. So we have this, which is what is AI and what is not AI. So, first thing, the key important thing in what is AI is this. Okay, what is it? Is you are learning from the patterns in the data via the machine learning model. which you have created. You're learning from patterns in the data. So key points. So patterns is the important part. Second, my pen is not okay. So patterns is an important part. Data is an important part. Model is an important part. Learning is an important part. Okay. So what is model doing? Model is actually simulating patterns which are present in the data. So if we think in terms of learning, what is learning? Let's learn an example. So if leads to B leads to C leads to D. Okay. Then if D happens, then what does it mean? Okay, so this is kind of like a logical problem which we are trying to think. What we have is we have this relationship between um, 4 5 things here. We have this relationship, and this relationship is what it is doing. It's kind of like having, okay, if A happens, then we are guaranteed that B happens. If C happens, then we have a guarantee that D happens. If this thing happens, blah 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 blah. So because it's a combination of such things, if we know that, oh, D has happened, then probably C must have led to that happening. If C has happened, then B must have led to that happening. If B has happened, A must have led to that happening. And then we can understand A has to have happened for D to happen. Now, this is our logical thinking. Okay, this is our completely logical thinking. It is not from the patterns in the data. It's not from patterns in the data. It is our logical thinking. Now, this is right hand side, left hand side. So A, 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 A. So right now, I have drawn 6 different kinds of A's. Okay. So A, or it's like maybe I'm in a rush, A like this, or it's like this. Okay. So we have understood as a concept what A looks like. Okay. We all know these 9 characters are all A's. How do we know that? Have you thought about it? How do you know that this is an A? How do you know that this is an A? This is an A. How do you know that this is a U? Then what decides that now this has become A or something? How do you know that? I don't know how cursive A is written, but let's say, okay, it's like this. How do we know that? We have approximately learnt through patterns that this is how generally A looks like. We do approximations. We do kind of like similarity thing subconsciously in the brain, and that's how we decide. There is no rule like a logical thing. Oh, there is no conscious thought happening that this is a bit, this line is a bit less, so that it must be A or something. It's not like that. It's just patterns. We have seen generally how A looks like, and from that we understand how all different kinds of A's will look like. There is no proper logic here. So that is AI, learning from patterns in the data. Okay. Now, when we say learning from the patterns in the data, if there comes following problem, what if there is not enough data? What if there is not enough patterns? What if the model which is going to learn the patterns in the data? Okay, so what happens? Model learns from patterns, right? What if the model is not complex enough to learn the patterns? What if the patterns are not visible enough for the model to learn? These are all the thought processes. Okay, these are all the things which are kind of like constantly happening, which one has to think about before one thinks about doing AI. Okay, so what is AI? Learning from the data, not from the rules, but learning from the data. This is the simplest thing which we know we has to kind of like know. And then if there is any condition where there is not enough data, then AI is not possible. Okay, there might be a case where there are no patterns in the data, then AI is impossible. There might be a case where AI is possible, but we don't have enough data or something. So it's like it could have been possible, but right now it is not. So lots and lots of possibilities are there. So this was our thinking of what is AI. Okay. Now think of AI, business, product, and problem. We have seen what is AI. AI is like, as long as there are patterns in the data, we should be able to learn from it. So for example, let me just show you. This is my PowerPoint. Okay, so let me just clone this and delete this and demo AI. So this is the slide. Let me just kind of like save it into documents now. If I go to home in my PowerPoint, there is this feature called as design ideas. If I click on this, the correlationship between the suggested designs, this is recommending me more and more patterns. This is one suggestion. What is AI? What is not AI? Learning from patterns in the data. When is AI not possible? Is the image relevant to what is mentioned here? Not really. Let's just see another demo. Demo desire path. It is developed, not planned. Okay. So I have created this slide. Now, this has kind of like created a slide here. And all of these right hand side, these are different design ideas. None of them are actually relevant to this thing which I have mentioned. So I was expecting desire path would lead to something. So let me just make it forest. And let us just wait for design ideas to kind of like give us recommendation. And as you can see, this is a bit intelligent, but not at all as intelligent as we would like it to be. Okay, so this is a office intelligent services. It does have AI, but not as much as we would like it to have. It won't have other intelligence things like calling different things which is relevant to this slide or something. Okay, maybe this slide might have it. So let me just do duplicate slide here, remove all these things here, and check on the design ideas. So not really. So all of these things are kind of like not working, but it does work many a times. I have actually used this for all the slides, and I can guarantee you that it is quite useful. Okay, so just one example of AI in the product. What is the product? Which is PowerPoint, right? Now, everybody here, just think of few situations. We are thinking about this part. Okay, AI, business, product, and problem. What is product doing? Making money or saving money or giving you convenience so that user use the product because it's a very common problem they face, or it's in a situation that you have to kind of like think of situations where you could use AI. Why are we doing this? Because this is the 7 stages of AI. Start with a business value, or AI solution will provide to you. Then these are all the stages, which is proof of concept, wherein You test it out. Here you have a hypothesis. What is the hypothesis? If I kind of like do AI here, it will give me a improvement in my product quality or something, so that users will love it. This is the hypothesis. Then we test it out, and it's like then the final stage is using it into the product. The final is like, okay, chosen for final product. Okay, so if we think of PowerPoint as an example, here you have to kind of like start with, oh, what are the different things which are possible here, which are AI problems. What is a AI problem? As long as there are patterns in the data, we should be able to do AI there. I mean, we can learn from the data and we can do that thing. It could be automatic image editing. It could be kind of like speech to text. It could be some processing. It could be audio processing. It could be video processing. Anything which is intelligent, anything maybe a human can do, AI should be able to do it. Okay. Think of a situations when added will kind of like make the product so much easy that that feature which is AI feature will be prioritized. So what right now we are doing is we are trying to think of a brainstorming session in which we will kind of like come up with different problems and scenarios for everyone. So right now is a discussion phase. So everyone, please open this link which has been just pinged on the chat. We just showcase it on the this thing. So the link is.gd slash ivahok. So is.gd ivahok. And what are we going here is go to the part which is 7 stages playing devil's advocate. Okay. W- right now I would love for everyone to just think of ideas in which possible AI problems, possible user personas, whether it is AI problem or not or something. So these are all the kind of like things which we will incrementally work on. The first thing we are working on is possible AI problems. So learn to think like a businessman. Okay, learn to think like businessman. And here in possible AI problems, everyone please start listing the ideas which you might have in your day to day products which you use. Then we will discuss them, and then we will kind of like move ahead to think about the possible user personas. So here we have Prashant. Prashant, would you like Prakash? Sorry, Prakash, would you like to add something? Some idea which you want to add here. So we have few people, 6 people online. I have given right access to everyone, and do give it out. I mean, do think of different ideas which you think will be AI ideas, and then slowly we will kind of like discuss them, and this will develop your thought process about what finding AI problems. As a inspiration, you can go to just kaggle.com, and on kaggle.com, simply go to place which is competitions on Kaggle, which is this compete. Here you will find all the competitions which have been present on Kaggle. Let me just sort them into the newest order. These are some of the examples of AI problem. And if I just simply make it via, rewards, the money people were willing to pay for that problem to be solved. Passenger screening algorithm for airport security. Okay, so just at the airport, I can think of at least 5 6 problems where I can use AI. Predicting price of something, which is Zillow housing price. Here we can think of different situations. Deep fake detection. Where can this be used and how and why? Just think up of ideas and problems and where you can use AI, and whatever ideas you think of here, kind of like write it. Okay, and this is not just a simple saying, just words. Do think about it as, what if this was your startup? Okay, what feature would be required? What business impact will it make? Is it profitable? Is it possible? All such things we will kind of like discuss. So in navigation, that I'm curious about. What in telemetry, what is the AI problem and something. Loyalty program, what kind of like do you mean by having a loyalty program? So these are kind of like questions which we should have. So if you simply spend time here thinking about these things, okay, that will actually give you and much better business acumen than a lot of people who are into data science currently. Okay, so we will take. Let me just start a 5 minutes timer. Go to kaggle.com/competitions, and here do think up of possible kind of like problems, how it can be solved, why it needs to be solved, the impact it will have on this thing. So take these 5 minutes, brainstorm, and write all that thing here, and then we will discuss it after we kind of like give everyone time to brainstorm. So let me just start the timer. So 5 minutes and 10 possible use cases we have. Think of yourself as entrepreneurs now, a startup incubating in Y Combinator and possible applications of AI, all these things. So this is an opportunity to have a brainstorming discussion with people from different disciplines all working together here. Okay, so the timer is done. Let's start thinking and going through the things one by one. So the first problem is navigation. Okay, route optimization now via maybe let's say Google Maps. This is for Google Maps. It will probably be for individual level, or if it is let's say corporates, maybe it could be let's say like Amazon. Amazon, let's say all the parcels which they have in the kind of like vicinity or to be delivery for during the day, or a food service. So it's like a route optimization for okay, yes, exactly. So Waze is the company which is Amazon's thing which is trying to do this. So here in the route optimization, um, getting faster to your destination, is it a problem? Yes. I think probably Google Maps and Waze already do this. Okay, so Maps and Waze, they already do this, and I'm not sure about the backend from Amazon and Swiggy or anyone who is into food deliveries. How do the in the background optimization happens? But I don't know. But I'm sure they might do this, and definitely this has to be a huge impactful thing for a business. Correct. So then this is we are thinking. So as a business, we can also think about. So Waze was a company whose entire problem statement was this. We have Uber, we have all of this thing. We have Uber Eats. We have which other companies could do with this thing? So eCart maybe, or even FedEx. There are so many companies which are kind of like into this delivery thing. So one thing is like if we makes let's say cross company collaboration of possibly route taking and number of deliveries they could be making, I think we might be able to optimize the costs even further. So that's an interesting thing, but it's quite let's say disconnected, removed from a beginner's point of view. So this navigation, I'll kind of like is definitely possibly a problem, but not that kind of definitely relevant for a beginner perspective. So then we have this telemetry. Let me just come to it after some time. For now, oh, this is interesting. Loyalty programs, having different rewards for different types of users of a product and award differential royalty rewards. Definitely. So, first thing here is doing customer segmentation to determine a customer lifetime value, finding true fans of the product. So, these are kind of like two things, and discounts for recurring customers, maybe. And what else? Tiers of products, tiers of the service, and identifying them accordingly. For example, right now we are all using Google Docs. Okay. Now, if let's say it we make it paid product, and then how many kind of like different versions of thing we should have? In Google Docs, we do have different types of this thing. So G Suite pricing. These are the pricing plans. We have basic, business, and enterprise. Now, this is mostly, according to basic as an individual. This is for business, and enterprise is a large enterprise. But if there was a product where there were different tiers, and we wanted to identify premium tier, ultra premium tier, stuff like this. If we can identify if a customer has a possibility to be a premium tier, then that makes a huge impact on how you can serve something. Or let's say, let me give an example. There is this thing. Uh, what is that bag? Luxury. Maybe it's Gucci bag. Okay, so as you can see, Gucci, or there is one more extremely luxury brand, something I have even forgotten the name, but these are kind of like luxury goods, a lot more kind of like expensive than normal products. So if you can figure out the tier of the let's say customer, and identifying them accordingly and map them with the service, this is an extremely valid business plan. If we go to Domino's or McDonald's or anything else, uh, the kind of like discounts or rewards, are they based on intelligence like this? Definitely not. If we have a recurring customer, then I mean, at least for Domino's, I get a SMS every Wednesday. Is there any intelligence in that? No. Even in emails. Okay. So discount via SMS, via emails. This intelligence in emails right now is missing quite a lot. The sheer volume of emails has increased so much that people are just tired even just by catching up to them. So how do we not overwhelm the user and still get the action from the user side and ensure that there is a recurring business, there is value to the user? How can we do that? We definitely can do this via a service which is using intelligence, and that will be a mind-blowing service. And I don't think there is any service for either SMS thing or even emails thing. Okay, so that is great. Then there was this chatbot for student life cycle. So Venkatesh, I'll be curious to know what did you mean exactly by this. Can you just here in the line, can you put in more details about what did you mean by this? We'll come back to this when Venkatesh has done adding the details there. Okay, so we have a lot of ideas, 22 ideas. Awesome. So my attendance through image recognition. Now this is a extremely valid and extremely useful application. Few companies have done this definitely, and it has made quite a lot of difference in ease of use. So this is just an example, as if you can think up of an idea, and if it is useful, how much difference can it make? What could be different areas where this is useful? That is a different thing. So it could be in corporates. So corporate, instead of badge, you just have face. In attendance, in colleges, maybe in these things, which is consorts or something. But that's where it will be a lot of this thing, privacy invasion. So I think these two kind of like make a lot of sense, and there are companies which have definitely done this. So this is a very interesting problem. So let me just mark it as X, and it is definitely a very interesting problem. Now, what could be possible problems here? Think of as a businessman. Maybe low light, maybe low megapixel photo, maybe too small of image in face. If it is the third point, we need to kind of like learn. Then accuracy across similar faces, maybe detecting same person across different situations like beard, haircut, maybe makeup, age, lighting. So you see, these are all the things which need to be addressed separately, and we might be able to make a extremely simple problem model quite early. But if we do want to think in terms of the production, then this is a completely different situation. We have to think up of the all the things and areas where it is applicable. How much efforts do we need to spend into something, and other business details like this. Prakash, are you there? Okay.
Yeah.
So through this, 1 to 22, 23 things we have here, is one of them some similar to what you might have worked in your career? Will be interesting to kind of like hear about that perspective then.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely.
Do check out from 1 to 23 and see if something. Jan, what about you? You can also kind of like relate to any startups you might have seen, any of your people any of the startups around the ideas which have been put in here.
And for me, like I just go to the point number 5, cancer
Okay.
predictions. So
Okay.
this is pretty much a very popular problem people are currently working on. I had a chance to
Hmm.
work on it also.
Hmm.
So since, but here, like detecting the cancer is something, it's not something, a very concrete status of the body.
Hmm.
So, so detecting the cancer on the early stage would be a profitable and beneficial case for the humankind as well as for the industry. So, so while we do all these things at that moment, we might have images, data in terms of images, which is useful but not so sufficient. But in such kind of thing, we also get so many medical, like other kind of readings, other kind of pulses and chemical reactions from the blood, and having that data in corporation with the image data is makes sense to providing the prediction capability of a cancer on the early stage itself. So that's quite an interesting use case, but definitely not very straightforward. And
So how
many
long did you work on it? How long did that project take?
I worked two separate problems more than a year
Okay.
on this, and
So
yes, we
total, how
had
much
some
time do you think that would have taken to finish that project?
it was something almost 14 months we have
Okay.
taken. And
So one,
when I say
two,
about the 14
two.
months, it's not about commercializing into the production, these 14
Okay.
months is mostly about researching about the problem and then understanding the data, acquiring more data, and further doing analysis, literature survey, and modeling part. So having
Right.
result in hand took 14 months actually.
Okay, okay. So, guys, if we go back up, here we have talked about flow of 7 stages. And when we began, we talked about that POC is a word known as proof of concept, which is we say, okay, we have done this model. This is the accuracy improvement we get. This is the impact it might have on business. And if the business approves, oh, this investment, if we make in this problem, the returns are too high, so that it's like it justifies the investment we make. So POC, it's like what Prakash was saying. He worked on that cancer problem, so 14 months was the time duration for the POC. So around
Exactly.
14 months, so quite a long POC. And as you can imagine, I can think that the data collection and getting the data would have been a big problem in itself, right?
That's right. You're right.
Right.
Because in
So
medical, getting the data and understanding the data, because it's not a dog versus cat or something which a human mind can understand. It required a specific medical knowledge which we might not have. So we have this 14-month time to read the books, understand, and making the domain knowledge and interpretation of images and the data. So that has, and it is not just medical. If one is working on the suppose financial data, security data, so we might have a little bit knowledge about that domain, but in order to work on intelligence problem, we need to have a very detailed knowledge. Then only we are able to understand the characteristics, we can perform the feature engineering. So domain knowledge has become important part. And we get this kind of knowledge from the experts. Like in the medical, we might have research experts in doctors and all, and finance, it could be other people.
okay, so you had doctors on your team.
Exactly. We have more than, I mean, it's a team of 3 medical practitioners. They are like
Okay.
senior doctors
Hmm,
on that area.
interesting. So, okay, so guys, we had this example, and correct. So, for the cancer prediction, this is how it worked in reality. Yan, did you find any problem which a startup around that problem?
Yes, there is a point 9 recommendation.
Oh, wow, it's
Okay,
a
here
quite.
it says like program recommendation enrolling online exam. But a friend of mine, she actually just recently started a company, which is so the problem they want to solve is around business networks, such as LinkedIn, because what they identified as a problem right now with networks like LinkedIn, they're mostly based on credentials as well, like where you have worked, what type of company, where did you go to school. So it's less about how you have worked at a company, how have you performed, how have you collaborated with other people. And their idea, the company is called Trusted 4. And their idea is to recommend people or base the network on recommendations. So instead of your credentials, what is much more important is who you recommended. For example, like someone has worked with Ajinkya, and that person would say, hey, I really enjoyed working with Ajinkya. And based on those recommendations, build a much more trustworthy network instead of just, hey, someone has worked at Google, someone has worked at Apple, someone went to an IIT, and this is why that person is supposed to be a strong performer. So I think that's a very interesting idea as well, to use AI for those recommendations. And that's just one example that I know of because a friend of mine started this company.
So, I would really love to hear your thoughts about number 10. So, what about number 10? It's like, is something like this, have you seen, because you were working in Udemy, right? So in the
Yeah.
education thing, do you know if any company or anyone who is working on this topic? Because I'm sure it will be incredible if we had a solution for this.
Yeah, that would be so. Actually, at Udemy, we thought about it, how we could build a product, um, but it's actually quite difficult to make that specific recommendation. What at Udemy we discussed was a much more static approach first, but just creating learning path. And I think some companies have implemented those. But ideally, you could build a recommendation system that's much more dynamic and much more personalized. And I think it is a very interesting problem, and AI can definitely be a solution here. But you have to make also an assessment of where a student is and what is the right next topic. And I think that type of assessment, that's difficult. How would you assess a student where he is? You can ask questions, can do like mini exams, but how accurate are those? So I think it
And
is a
sheer
problem.
number of topics would also be a difficulty, right?
Right, right. So I think it is definitely, if someone can crack that nut, that's a company, that's
Mm.
a business. Like, highly recommend to everyone in that training here right now. If you take that, how you can build that type of recommendation system, assessment and recommendation system, most companies would buy your product, or many companies would buy your product. So no one has really solved it yet. So that's definitely an interesting problem to work on.
Interesting. I didn't realize. So Ajay Thakur says like one company from Canada which is designed course as per recommendations. Okay, interesting. So
Interesting.
I'll check it out. So let's take question this 11. So posture classification for fitness regime. Let me just open Cult Fit, Cult Live. So when because of the COVID, people were locked in at their home, and now it's like you can actually work out from your house just by using your webcam. So let me just log into this thing and show you how it works. So I'm just logging into my this thing. 30. Okay. So let's see. Right now is anything live? It's 2 almost 3. Yoga. Okay, maybe let's go for this 2:30, 2:30. Okay. So right now, let me see if what is happening. So this is happening just live. No camera tracking. So as you can see, if we could actually do this live tracking here and posture correction, it would have been a lot more amazing exercise app. There are a few companies which were making solution, but I don't think they were able to use that into product. But anyone who makes a service out of this and can make a posture classification and correction product for exercises, that will definitely be a huge business, especially in this time wherein because of corona the online fitness business is booming, and all such companies would definitely love to buy a product like this. So when you think about a problem, you just don't have this bias which is from just one thought process you have. You have to think about a lot more details. What other things could you do? What is the thing which is possible in the least amount of effort? Should we go for the least amount of effort approach, or should we solve the most complex problem? Is it possible to solve it now? There are a lot of such questions. When you kind of like think about them, only then your business thought process and acumen improves. Okay. And this is what you should develop even as a junior data scientist when you are learning whatever you want to learn. You combine 7 stages with the business knowledge as well. If you are doing a project and you are showcasing that project on Kaggle or on YouTube or on GitHub, you can confidently talk about the business impact. You can realize how it can be customized for any different situation, and then you can learn to identify any other similar problems. That combination of AI and business makes you a lot more valuable than a person who just knows how to do stuff between 2 to 7. When we add the business into the picture, things become very different. And that is what, I wanted to kind of like just bring into focus when we were kind of like just discussing stuff. So we saw this loyalty program. There were lots of possibilities here. We saw a situation about cancer thing. Here we just thought about question 9 and 10. It's like there are a lot of things. We just have to do this brainstorming and things. So menu suggestion in a restaurant, interesting. Whether you have ingredients for it or not, that's a thing. Is like a recipe creator from available ingredients. Instead of menu suggestion, it's like many people have, want to cook at home, and they would start, okay, I want to make some, let's say, chicken tikka. Then it's like, would you have all the ingredients for the chicken tikka? That's a different story. Maybe we just have a product in which we take photo of all the things we have at home, and it will give you a recipe which tells you to use whatever stuff you have and make the product out of it, which is, the food you want to eat. That could be an idea. So rather than menu suggestion, this is a lot more useful because this is thinking about what is the audience. Okay, it's like you have to think about the product. What is the audience? Will it make money? Is there a market? Are there large number of users who will have that problem? These are the things which, are included in the business thought processes. So you can kind of like, go about all of these things. Some of these things can become your own startup. I have actually seen that there was a startup which was trying to combine the personality assessment and telling the just career path. But we can have a lot of things here: personality assessment, recommending different ways according to someone's personality, and what, they might enjoy more if they learn, in what way should they have learning, blah 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 blah. So this is the kind of like business thought process I think is extremely relevant. And this is what we had, just as an overview today. Then next, in the next series. Yes.
Ajinkya, quick question. Can you talk a little bit about, because we just talked about startups and that you can actually start building companies using AI as a solution. Can you talk a little bit about all the startups and companies that are currently out there, the advertising AI as their core product, but actually it is not really AI, so that there's actually a difference between whether there is AI in the product or not?
Yes. So if I go to this cure fit, which we were kind of, so here right now, if you go for dance fitness, so I think dance fitness has begun. Let me just start here. So the dance fitness, which is here, if you see on the bottom right, let me just mute it first. Okay, so I have muted this. As you can see here, the bottom right corner is the score. Okay, how is the score detected? It's by, whatever movement I do in my webcam. So my internet is slow now. Because of that, it is, not tracking. But as and when, just my movement is detected, the score which is at the bottom is just changed. So it's not changing at all. So this is not a AI solution right now. It is just checking the movement. Similarly, there was a study which showed that around 50 to 60% of startups which, say that they are an AI company, were not really using AI. It was just normal application development. So whether they misinterpreted if it was AI problem or it was a difficult problem to solve using AI, we don't know. Many a times they just kind of like said, okay, AI, because maybe that would have given them more funding or something. Whereas in reality, if we actually think up of situations where AI is useful, that makes a huge difference to product utility. If I simply open PowerPoint and if I click on this design ideas, now just imagine this graphic which was created. If I can create a graphic in this manner with help of a tool which is like a AI tool, AI aided tool, that is a lifesaver. A company like Canva, which allows us to create infographic or anything. So that Canva company was quite recently founded, just 2012, by a graphic designer herself. And then it was just kind of like a way using a tool to make something now evaluated what, more than $3 billion. And if we can similarly have a product for creating icons, products for creating flowcharts, product for creating this thing, now that is a mind blowing application which anyone can make a company out of. So this is what we have to see. It's like, let's not just think about AI as this thing. Many companies misinterpret AI. We need to actually know if it is AI problem or not, and if you can do it better than other companies, then definitely you are a lot more valuable. So 23 I checked. Now for 24, it's like building a tool for online drinks and beverages supply so that it can reduce drink and drive problem. Reduces accident while drinking, nowadays standing in queues. So this is definitely a social impactful problems which might have, but I'm not sure if it is a AI problem. It's like, definitely this is the kind of like common confusion which many startups have. They think that it is a AI problem, and from the business itself a wrong direction is set. You have to think about AI if it is a AI problem, if it is possible. If it is possible, then there is a different thing, is like, is it profitable? And then if it is profitable, then we have to think about how much is the audience, in what kind of way would they love the product, and blah blah blah. So if you consider all of these factors for the 23 and 24, it seems like if we change them a bit, it might become a possible profitable AI product which is useful. But otherwise, this becomes too vague and not really impactful if we are talking in terms of numbers. Definitely very impactful in terms of social impact, but not in terms of number. So that's the kind of like reason it might not become a company. Other way is driver distraction detection. Instead of making drink and drive problem, if we just make it like, oh, whether a driver is distracted or not, and that becomes a much wider pool of possible customers for a thing. We can also have it in, let's say, a training like this, student engagement detection. So through camera detecting face and something and finding whether a person is distracted or not. It can be used in driving, it can be used in teaching, it can be used where it can be used. Mm, Maybe on the climbing things, climbing tracks which are risky. A lot of things, this things, this simplifies the problem, because you just have to do face analysis, and then you decide where that can be applicable, and then you think about business where you can sell the problem. So even for 4, if you just customize it, I think these are the possible areas where a similar problem can be applied and it can make a social impact anyways. So this is the thought process. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about reading, going through Y Combinator companies list. So you just see Y Combinator number of companies. It's very interesting. So every year the startups which kind of like go through Y Combinator, it's like 2000 every time. You can kind of like just go through them. Okay, okay. What was the companies in 2020? in, I don't know, S stands for maybe S is for San Francisco. So what are the companies, what is the AI problem, how many of them could be profitable, and blah 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 blah. So this is like a text. Ooh, this is interesting. This is 2000. This company is still active. This was incubator in 2014, so a 6-year-old company. File income tax in shortest time, maximum tax deduction, and doesn't seem like a AI problem, but there could be a situation where AI could be used here. So if you start thinking like a business, a AI problem and the impact on the users, that will make you very useful and valuable into the market, which is this data science market. So that is what I wanted to just showcase, wherein it talks about different phases of AI, and we went into a lot of detail about the problem part. Next time onwards, we'll go through rest of the stages, maybe some bit of coding part, common pitfalls a student might face, and what to learn and how to learn, and blah blah blah. Okay, so from the content side, this is what we had. It's like, if you have any questions now, please ask them in the chat. We are here, we can answer, take those questions, and we can answer them right here, right now. So on the chat, you can ask the questions.
Until we get some questions, maybe Prakash, because you are definitely a practitioner, have been working for years in that field. How is it for you? Maybe like that first phase of before building actually a product or even coming up with a POC. How is it for you to identify those problems and kind of stress test those problems, whether they actually are valuable to the business, and then whether they can be solved through AI?
Yeah, that's very nice question actually. And exactly, the problem is never a AI problem. Problem is just one which, if it is could be solved, then it can make a business. And then when we go into the much deeper insights and we realize what part of the problems could be solved using traditional computings where rules are defined and applied, we go for that. And there is in a situation where we understand that there is no existing systems, there's no existing algorithms which could work for us, and that is the time that we have data in hand but there's no rule. So there AI comes into the picture, and in order to understand it a little more, maybe we can take some example from the existing data sheet. It's like somebody has mentioned about the problem number 21. So it's about predicting the court judgment. So if in nutshell, if I talk about, we don't need a prediction system for court judgment, and we need to understand it because judgment of the court by any particular judge is not changed by the person, but it is driven by the constitute. Actually, it is driven by the law. So it is a rule-based systems where judge try to understand the proof and evidence and try to match it with the laws written on the books. So it's a rule-based system, and we do not attempt it to predict it, because we only predict, we only apply the machine learning where we don't have rules, where we don't have laws and feasibility to work on that. If we talk a little bit detail about that particular problem, yes, in order to reduce the workload for the courts, for the lawyers, there could be a possibility where manually currently lawyers and judges are referring to a similar cases, and they're going through the manual process of months and years. That we could do using document clustering, that we could utilize natural language processing. Currently a lot of state of arts are there like BERT, GPT. Maybe this could be utilized in order to understand the document similarity, cases similarity. So the work of the court could be faster than before. But when it comes to the judgment, it is a rule-based system. That rule is, everything is written on the books, everything is written on the law, and based on that any judge is provide the judgment. So we need to understand the problem in terms of that we are not going to apply the AI until it is not required. So in that particular use case, what we're trying to understand, we cannot do the prediction of code judgment, but we can use processing. We can reduce the processing by using automated document clustering, similarity learning things we can apply in order to make it an efficient pathway further. So this is like why I was trying to give an example here, because all the problems we work in the company, we do not apply the AI. AI is the last milestone. If nothing can be worked, but we have a liberty of having data. So what we expect, we instead of having a rule, we are trying to understand and learn the patterns from the data so we can approximate the rule. So what, and another problems it was written, which Ajinkya is also explaining about drivers health related something, right? In drink and drive, that particular problem statement. So this kind of problem are already been pretty much solved, where we having a camera and just using the image, face image of a driver and a student, we can get to know the fatigue level of a person. Having fatigue level of the person, we can identify the heartbeat, we can identify the blood pressure. It is already state of art. Having that in hand, we can say whether somebody is pretty much focusing on the class, whether somebody is fit to drive the car. So we should try to understand the things is that we apply the AI when it is required and when it cannot be done by traditional systems. So that is like pretty much approach regardless of the domain we are working, but the approach always remains same, because AI is a part of the system. AI is not whole itself a business system. So that's very important. I mean, something I wanted to share here.
So, Prakash, if you check what Jumaira just said, is like whenever we are working with business and when we are trying to persuade business that we want to take it to production, how does that communication with
Okay.
happen? So I
So
was
the
saying that
comment,
the discussion
right?
kind of like happens to and fro between the stakeholders and deal like this. And then Jumaira's question is like that's also part of the job, right? But it will be very interesting to hear your perspective on this.
Exactly. I think it's very, very practical and interesting question actually. So when we start working on a problem, it is all about we use our knowledge, we use our intellectual. So definitely it's not beyond something we control. It's like in a working hours or something. Once we start working on the problem, a mindset is according to that problem itself. So maybe when we are getting a free time at home, sometimes we are talking to the similar intellectual level and domain expert people. We might have a discussion deriving towards that problem itself. So it's a way beyond than the working hours for sure. And but definitely until unless it is interesting for us, it is not a burden for us. So we really don't mind to spending efforts and thinking process and making it nice thought process even beyond the office times. And because we cannot pretty much confine something to ourselves that when we are in office we have a different mindset. It's usually doesn't work, because and most of the machine learning projects, one can understand the coding design part comes very later and it's not very significant, but researching about the problem, as Ajinkya already mentioned, yes, doing a nice googling over that part, understanding the existing businesses, it all takes a lot of time, and compiling that knowledge which matches the business problem is the important aspect. So that all things you cannot do just in the office time, but you might be doing it consciously and subconsciously while you are not in the office also. Yeah, it just works like that.
Yeah,
At least in
true.
my experience, it works like that.
Yeah, true, true. Cool. Yeah, and do you want to add something about the business perspective? Otherwise, questions, I'm answering on the chat. So,
Yeah, I have nothing right now. Are there some questions we can answer? We haven't answered yet.
So question about certificate, we'll send it via
Let me go
email,
through.
and rest I actually answered. So Abhishek's question, I'll just answer on the chat, but otherwise I think we are done for the day.
Yeah. So what about the next 3 sessions? Maybe Achinke, you can give a little overview of what we're gonna cover in at least session 2 next week, so
Yes.
people have an idea.
So
what we will do next week.
in next 3 sessions, we will step by step. So session 1 was more like brainstorming session. Session 2 onwards, we will go into the coding part of each thing. So next session will go through data collection and data preparation, coding. Then it will be data visualization, feature engineering, and finally ML modeling and deployment. So that way, it's like everything we can kind of like just cover them part by part, and then we'll ask you what more would you like to be included going forward, and the details like this will be slowly covered in each session. Okay.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, everyone. That was session 1 of our mini series, where we have a total of 4 sessions. Yeah, again, we are 4 people. Prakash, Achinkya, a little differently, and I think that's you all also already experienced today, and maybe you have attended previous sessions, and you can see, you can feel that we want to make it much more practical, hands-on type of training, and this is also what you can expect from our upcoming online course, comprehensive course that will be published soon. We're working on it right now, which will actually much longer, much more into depth and detail. But yeah, we will keep you posted when it's published and online, and hopefully you will enroll. Yeah, so from my side, I think that's it. Prakash, Achinkya, any last words?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can conclude the session. Thanks, everyone. And if you have any feedback or questions, feel free to message us through different channels. Follow us on our social media channels, where we continue to post updates and news. And otherwise, we will see you again next week.
Cool. See you guys. Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.